So in this video, we'll be doing 10 Giants bold predictions for the 2020 season. Hopefully there is a season, obviously. That could be a bold prediction in itself. But last year I did a video about this same concept, and some were pretty good, some were awful. I remember I thought DeAndre Baker was going to be the best corner on this team, but I got a couple right. Like I thought Tate Davis would be the starter over BJ Goodson. He was week 1. Kyle Laletta would be cut, got that one right. So there was some good, some bad, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. They're bold, they're not meant to all be correct, but hopefully you guys find this entertaining. And leave some bold predictions in the comments. Those will be fun to read, and hopefully we'll get a good laugh at them, and maybe they'll be right. So we'll just take a look in the future and see what happens. But hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and let's get into it. So number 1 is that Andrew Thomas and Xavier McKinney make the NFL All-Rookie team in 2020. So there are 2 players from their position that make it, 2 offensive tackles and then 2 safeties. So the guys they'll be competing with mainly is Jedrick Wills, the guy that I was really enamored by. I was a big fan of him and Thomas. Mekhi Becton of the Jets, obviously. Tristan Wirfs, who a lot of Giants fans liked. Austin Jackson, who I'm personally not a fan of. Isaiah Wilson, and then Jonah Williams, who I think is going to be eligible because he did not play last year as a rookie. So I do believe this is considered his rookie year. And then for McKinney, there's Grant Delpit, obviously, Kyle Duggar of the Patriots, Antoine Winfield Jr., who I liked a lot, Jeremy Chin, who's an interesting player for the Panthers, and Ashton Davis, who I think was the Giants' pick, actually, but the Jets got him via the Leonard Williams trade. So I do think it's very possible because there's not going to be many offensive tackles that are rookies that are starting, and Andrew Thomas will have that because of Nate Solder being out. He would have started anyway, but still. And then Xavier McKinney will basically play every defensive snap as long as he's healthy. He'll get starter snaps. He'll be next to Jabril Peppers and hopefully put in a good position by Patrick Graham to make a lot of noise and put up some good numbers. And I really wanted to put Darnay Holmes in this conversation, but I believe there's only 2 cornerback spots. This was a very good corner draft. They had C.J. Henderson, Jeff Okudah, Christian Fulton, Trayvon Diggs, a bunch of great cornerbacks in this draft. So I think for him it would be very tough. I do think he's going to have a good season, Darnay Holmes, but I would not put him in here yet. But for these 2 guys, I think it is very possible. It's not the boldest of predictions on this list, but hopefully they do make that rookie team. Number 2 for me is that O'Shane Ximines has 8+ sacks in the 2020 season. So his numbers, as we know, in 2019 and playing 45% of the defensive snaps, he did have 4.5 sacks. And if you double that, obviously he has 9. So if he played 90% of the snaps last year, he would have been on pace to have 9 sacks in the season, which is great. And I do think he'll get the starter snaps on defense this year. So maybe 8 sacks is lowballing it a bit, but I do think 8 sacks is a great season, especially for a guy that is a 3rd rounder in his 2nd year. That would be a phenomenal season and a step in the right direction for sure. I'm a big fan of him. I love his pass rushing moves, his potential. He'll be opposite of Marcus Golden most likely, so he has another pretty good pass rushing player next to him, so that'll definitely help him for sure. Maybe he won't get double teamed now and stuff like that. So I think it's not only just doubling his numbers, he'll get better because he'll be more mature, he'll be more comfortable in the NFL, and he'll just be more of an NFL-ready body type, basically. So he's going to be more comfortable with this league, and I think he'll understand offensive linemen more in the NFL. He'll be really good in year 2. I'm excited for him, so I do think he'll get 8+ sacks in the 2020 season. Number 3, I'm going back to the well because if you remember on last year's show when I did this, I predicted Golden Tate would lead the team in receptions and receiving yards. And it probably would have happened if he was not suspended. I made the video before his suspension came out, so bad timing, I guess. But number 3 for me is Golden Tate has 70+ receptions and over 1,000 yards in 2020. So his 2019 numbers in 11 games were 49 receptions, just under 700 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I do think the 6 touchdowns is a bit of an outlier. Probably won't get that again. But his 2019 stats over 16 games now, it would be 71 receptions, just under 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns. I don't expect 8 touchdowns, but the receptions and the yards, I think, are very doable for a guy like Golden Tate. And I've always thought Golden Tate was the perfect receiver for a Daniel Jones type of quarterback, a guy that's very accurate over the middle of the field and a very good intermediate passer. And that's the kind of routes that Golden Tate excels at. He's still good at yards after the catch. I know based on the analytics and next-gen stats, his separation numbers were not all that great last year. Maybe he wasn't ready because he was suspended. I don't know, but I think he'll be better this year. I think he's going to have a really good year for the Giants. He's dependable. He plays basically every game as long as he's not suspended. He's played like 15 plus games like basically every year. So even in Dallas last year, by the way, a guy named Randall Cobb, a blast from the past from the previously of the Packers, he's kind of been down for the last few years. But even with Randall Cobb, Jason Garrett got 800 plus receiving yards out of him. So Golden Tate, who's a better player, I expect him to get maybe around 1,000 yards. Of course, he has to play all 16 games basically, but for a guy with his track record of staying healthy, I do think it is possible, and I think Golden Tate's going to be a big piece of this Giants offense this year. Number 4, and this is more of a sad one, but Wayne Gallman is cut before the 2020 regular season. So Gallman is one of 3 remaining offensive players from the Jerry Reese era, I believe. It's Evan Engram, Sterling Shepard, and Wayne Gallman. So him not being a Dave Gettleman pick definitely works against him. And if you remember last year, if you were still watching the Giants towards the end of the year, they were making Gallman a healthy scratch basically for Javorius Allen, who they picked up in the middle of the year. Allen's a decent back, nothing special, but it was kind of surprising to see him benched in favor of Javorius Allen. So for Gallman, he does have history of fumbles. He has 6 fumbles, I believe, in his career, and he's been in the league for like 4 years, 3 years, whatever it is. And a guy like Deion Lewis, who's been around forever, only has 6 in his whole career, which is crazy. But Gallman definitely has issues holding onto the ball, and them benching him towards the end of last year, whether it was a Gettleman thing, a Pat Shurmur thing, hopefully in his sake it was a Pat Shurmur thing, and now it's a new coach. But overall, it was not a good look for him. And of course, now they have Deion Lewis. They just cut John Hillman, unfortunately. Good guy. I feel bad for him. Hopefully he lands on a different team. They have Javon Leake, of course, and some other guys. So we'll see, but I just don't think it's a guarantee he makes this team. And if the Giants have to make a tough decision between a guy that can return kicks in Javon Leake and a guy like Wayne Gallman who doesn't return kicks, they'd probably side with the Javon Leake instead. So my opinion is he will be cut before the season starts. Number 5, James Bradberry makes the Pro Bowl roster. So, of course, making the Pro Bowl to some people isn't really too much of a big deal. I mean, and the Pro Bowl is kind of a joke, and they probably won't play the game this year anyway based on the circumstances. But Bradberry's never made one in his career yet. He's probably been close a couple of times, but he comes from a division, the NFC South, that had receivers like Mike Evans, they had Michael Thomas, they had Julio Jones, and he faced those guys 6 times per year, basically. So for him, that's basically a very tough matchup for almost half of your season. And now he goes to playing against guys like Alshon Jeffrey, who might miss the beginning of the year. There's Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, who's still a good player, but it's definitely not the murderer's row that was in the NFC South. So I'm not to say those receivers in the NFC East are bad. I mean, of course, Amari Cooper's a great player. McLaurin is great for his 1 year, and Alshon's on the way down, but still a pretty decent player. But it's not what it was in the NFC South for sure. So you will have an easier number 1 receivers to play against, and he'll be asked to do a lot of man coverage in this Patrick Graham scheme, but I do think that can take out some of the best traits for James Bradberry. I think he's very good at staying with his man. He knows when to make a break on the ball and take away some interceptions, and that could definitely get his name recognized and be in the Pro Bowl. So he's never made it in his career, but when the Giants signed Janoris Jenkins back in 2016, he never made it either. In his first year for the Giants, I know they were 11-5 that year, so it was different, but Jenkins made a Pro Bowl as well. And I'm sure some guys will back out of it based on the circumstances, as I said. So I do think there's a shot it happens. I have high hopes for Bradberry. I like him as a player, and hopefully he does find a way to make the Pro Bowl roster. Number 6, here's another positive one. Saquon Barkley has over 2,300 scrimmage yards in 2020, which is a lot. I don't know if he's going to get that number, but he has the talent for it for sure. Just needs to stay healthy. So in 2018, Barkley led the NFL with just over 2,000 scrimmage yards, so this would have to be better than his rookie year, which is saying a lot. And for reference, Christian McCaffrey, who just had a god season basically for a running back, was the 3rd player in NFL history for a running back to have 1,000 rushing yards and receiving yards. He had 2,392 scrimmage yards. So I think it's possible for Barkley because, as I've said in my running back tier list, I think Barkley and McCaffrey are 2 of the most talented running backs in this league. And now he gets a offensive coordinator in Jason Garrett that definitely has proven in the past he likes using his running backs, especially the workhorse kind, and Ezekiel Elliott and DeMarco Murray as well. So there was a year where Murray almost got 400 carries. It was pretty crazy. Barkley probably won't get that much, but he should get at least 300 in my opinion as long as he's healthy. So the Giants should be a run-first team in my opinion. They should not rely on Daniel Jones to throw the ball 50 times a game, as I've said before. And with with Saquon Barkley being a top 2 back in the league, in my opinion, and having an improved offensive line, I say why not use it? And I think the guy has a legit chance to do it. I think him getting 1,500 rushing yards is a very it's possible in my opinion. I think he has to rush for over 100 yards a game basically for that to happen, but it is possible. I think Saquon's that good. The Giants defense obviously has to keep them in the game. They can't have a negative game script because then you have to pass the ball when you're losing, but if the Giants defense can keep it close, I think it's possible Barkley can do this. In the receiving game as well, Daniel Jones has to be more willing to dump the ball down, and there has to be more design plays to Barkley from Jason Garrett, because Jones showed last year he's not really a big fan of checking the ball down. He'd rather take the risk, which I'm fine with, but sometimes it is better to take the check down like Eli Manning did back in 2018, and he did a little too much in my opinion. So hopefully Barkley finds a way to get this. I hope the Giants maximize him to his abilities because he is an amazing player. You guys know I'm not a fan of taking a running back that early, but if the Giants can get 2,300 scrimmage yards out of him, I won't have much of a leg to stand on. So hopefully this does happen, and hopefully he does prove me wrong this year. Number 7, Julian Love wins the cornerback 2 job over Sam Beal. So to me, it's not too bold to say that, but based on some other fans' opinions and them saying Julian Love is too slow to play cornerback, I think it is kind of bold based on what other people say. So Love was asked to play safety last year. I mean, of course, because Jabril Peppers went down later in the season, but he was drafted as a cornerback for Notre Dame, was a runner-up for the Jim Thorpe Award, which, basically is given to the best cornerback in college football that year. Lost it to DeAndre Baker, funny enough. So the guy can play outside corner based on what we saw in college. I made a video about it. Hopefully you went back and watched that one. But Love proved that his short area quickness is not good enough to play slot cornerback in the NFL, and the Giants already have 2 starting safeties in Xavier McKinney and Jabril Peppers, so I don't think Love's the type of guy that you want to bench. I feel like he's too good for that in my opinion. They will give him every shot to win the cornerback 2 job opposite of James Bradberry, so I don't trust Sam Beal, the guy with the chronic shoulder issues that's missed 26 of his first 32 NFL games and didn't even play that well in those games anyway. I don't trust him too much, and people have a hard time with Julian Love's 40 time, but as I said in that previous video, his 4.54 40 was faster than Richard Sherman, Joe Hayden, Josh Norman, Xavier Howard, Marcus Peters, and probably some other good cornerbacks as well. So, as I said, Love has too much promise as a player and showed too much in year 1 for the Giants to just throw him on the bench and say, you're only going to play in case of an injury to Jabril Peppers or Xavier McKinney. I think he's too good for that. They should give him a chance to be the cornerback 2. That's assuming DeAndre Baker is out, which I do think will happen, unfortunately. But I do think Love has a chance, and a legit chance, to win that cornerback 2 job, and I do think he will do it. Number 8, and here's where all of you are going to hate me and have some problems with it, but I think the Giants start no better than 1-4 this season, assuming the schedule stays the same. Of course, based on what's happened in baseball, schedules can change pretty easily, but if the Giants schedule stays the same as it is right here, or there, I don't know what side it would be on, but yeah, I don't see the team starting out too well in my opinion. So they open up against Pittsburgh. That's a Super Bowl ready team in my opinion if they get the real Ben Roethlisberger back. Then they go at Chicago. They played there last year. They get a better quarterback, in my opinion, than Nick Foles, and I just feel like that's a tough defense to beat, obviously. Then you get the Niners at home. Okay, it's a 1 o'clock game at home. If the Niners start off 2-0, maybe the Giants catch them sleeping. I doubt it, but still, it is possible. Then they go out to Los Angeles. Then they go out to Dallas, and those are tough games, as we know. So, I just don't see a way this team maybe they go 2-3, best case scenario. I just don't see them going better than 1-4. 0-5 wouldn't even shock me, but I do think 1-4 is the way I would say it. I think most likely they could win at Chicago. Maybe they can win at Los Angeles. I'm honestly not even sure. It's such a tough schedule to start out. Now, it does get a little easier down the stretch, but overall it's a tough schedule, as we know. And those teams last year, their combined records, those 5 teams were 46-34, if I did my math correctly. So this is going to be tough, and I do hope the Giants somehow start out 3-2 or 4-1. That would be amazing, but just me being my realistic self and trying to give you guys my honest opinion, I don't see it starting out too well. But as I've said, it's not all about the record. It's about the younger players getting better. So if the Giants do start out 1-4, you shouldn't give up on the season. It's just about the younger guys getting better. And I don't give up on a season until my team has 8 or 9 losses. That's when you know it's basically over mathematically. If they start 1-4, that would suck, but it's not the end of the world. As long as their young players are showing promise, that's all that matters to me. Number 9, Evan Engram is traded before the trade deadline. So Evan Engram, as I mentioned before in the Wayne Gallman slide, is a part of the Jerry Reese and Penn McAdoo regime, and that was back in 2017. So this is not a Dave Gettleman or Joe Judge guy. The Giants did pick up his 5th-year option for 2021, which I thought was a good move at the time. They owe him $6 million next year if he's on the roster. If someone were to trade for him, they get him for $6 million next year. So of course, if a team traded for him, they basically get him for 1.5 years. So that would be a good investment for them. So, a team like the Giants, I do expect them to start slow next year based on the schedule. They could sit at the trade deadline and field some offers for Engram. If they get like a late 2nd-round pick, late 3rd-round pick, maybe multiple picks, you might sit there to yourself and say, you know what, this guy's injury prone. I don't see him being a part of the future. Let's try and get some assets for him. And maybe they do pull the trigger. Maybe the Giants want to see more of Caden Smith. Maybe he's playing well next year. Maybe they want to see more of him. And then, of course, you want to accumulate more assets and draft picks. Get yourself more lottery tickets. It's not the worst idea in the world. And if they can be 3rd-round picks, 2nd-round picks, maybe you get like a 3rd and a 5th or something like that for him. It is possible. But if this were to happen, Evan Engram would have to be playing well and healthy at that time. So last year during 2019 season, he was playing well the first 7-8 weeks until he got hurt. But then, he got hurt. So I think if he does what he did last year and just stays healthy for the first half, a team might buy into that and say, you know what, let's just trade for Evan Engram. We'll get him cheap for 1.5 years and see what he does. They don't have to give him a big extension. They get him for another offseason, and they can see what he does on their team for a full year. So it does make sense, and there's definitely some teams out there that could be in need for an athletic, good receiving tight end. The Patriots come to mind, obviously. I mean, that's a team that doesn't have many tight ends nowadays. Maybe the Colts, if Jack Doyle is kind of slowing down, they traded Ebron or released him or something like that. He's on the Steelers now, I believe. So maybe that happens. Maybe another team, the Bills, maybe Dawson Knox doesn't live up to expectations and the Bills are a wild card team. There's many teams that could use an athletic tight end is what I'm saying. So it would not shock me if he was traded. This is part of the previous regime, and maybe Joe Judge and Gettleman want some assets and they think Evan Engram's the guy that can field them some good assets. And number 10, Matt Peart gets at least 2 starts at right tackle towards the end of the season. So when Nate Solder announced he was not playing in 2020, it definitely opened up the door for Matt Peart because I expected Solder to be the starting right tackle and then Fleming to back him up. Now he's the backup Matt Peart. So basically if Fleming underperforms or the Giants are out of it towards the end of the year, we might see Matt Peart. And if you're the Giants, you're saying to yourself, well, Cam Fleming's not the future. Let's just hypothetically say they go into week 15, the Giants are, a bunch of games out of the playoffs and they're just out of playoff contention. Why would you say to yourself, like, let's keep playing Cam Fleming? Like, no, you probably want to see your 3rd-round rookie Matt Peart play. And if the Giants have the type of season where I think they will, which is going to be like 6-7 wins or so, maybe less, then I say why not play Matt Peart and see what he's got. So I think it's a pretty good, I wouldn't say it's too bold in my opinion, but I think it's a good opportunity for him because now there's only one guy in your way, and it's Cam Fleming. He's not the best right tackle in the league. He can definitely underperform, and maybe we see Matt Peart earlier than expected. If he starts like halfway through the year, it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world. If Solder was still here, then it would surprise me, but now he's the next man up, so anything's possible for a guy like Peart, and I'm sure a lot of people are excited for him, so hopefully he does get an opportunity, and I do think he will start at least a couple games for next season. So that'll do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Once again, leave in the comments your bold predictions. I'll be looking forward to reading those, and I'll talk to you guys next time.